of that, filming the TV series and hiding a very important vehicle that we finally got an opportunity to build something to compete at Detroit.
You guys hid that well.
Yeah.
We've had, how many road tours do you think of?
For years, Kevin Schiele was one of the most recognizable men inside Kindig-It Design. To viewers of Bitchin Rides, he was Kev Dog, the broad-shouldered shop foreman who could walk into the middle of a complicated build, spot what was wrong, and get the crew moving again. And then, just like that, many viewers pointed out that he was gone. So, what really happened to Kevin Schiele from Kindig-It Design? Are the rumors true? Well, to address these suggestions, we need to look back at his whole journey. The man who seemed to disappear. Kevin joined Kindig-It Design in 2004, and he runs its 27,000 square foot shop, overseeing builds from beginning to end. He specializes in chassis and suspension, but Kindig-It describes him as a jack of all trades. He is also the man behind the wheel of the Kindig-It rig, carrying the company's cars and equipment to events across America. That made Kevin particularly important when Bitchin Rides arrived. The show premiered in 2014 and transformed a Salt Lake City custom car shop into an international television brand. Kevin became one of its central personalities alongside Dave Kindig, giving viewers the impression that they were watching not just a designer and a crew, but a tightly connected team. By the time Hot Rod visited Kindig-It Design, the shop had grown from the small operation Dave and Charity Kindig started decades earlier into a 27,000 square foot facility with more than 40 employees, plus another 10,000 square foot warehouse nearby. Kevin, who had been there since 2004, was still the shop foreman and one of the show's co-hosts. And then, the television spotlight began to disappear. The 11th season eventually arrived in 2025, yet the broader Motor Trend television and streaming operation was already undergoing major disruption. Motor Trend Plus was being wound down, programming was being reshuffled, and the future of several familiar shows was becoming increasingly uncertain. Then, something else began to happen. Kevin Schiele, the unmistakable Kev Dog audiences had watched for years, seemed to become less visible. For years, Bitchin Rides had placed him inside millions of living rooms, turning a shop foreman into a recognizable television personality. He was not simply another employee in the background. He was one of the people audiences associated with the identity of Kindig-It itself. So when the show's presence began weakening, and Kevin no longer appeared with the same regularity, a natural question emerged. Had something happened to KevDogg? Had he finally walked away from Dave Kindig? Had the pressures of the business caught up with him? Or was there something happening behind the scenes that viewers were never shown? By this point, Kindig-It had grown into a major custom car business with a large workforce, multiple builds moving through the facility, and customers expecting extremely expensive, highly individualized vehicles. The television series showed the polished version of that world. Dramatic reveals, spectacular fabrication, and problems that appeared to have solutions. Behind that image was a much more complicated business. There were real legal battles, and the larger the brand became, the more complicated the machinery behind it became. Then came the stories. But there's a lot more to this story. Before the cameras, how KevDogg became essential. Long before television turned Kindig-It Design into an international brand, Kevin Schiele was already becoming one of the people Dave Kindig could not afford to lose. Schiele joined Kindig-It in 2004, when the company was still a much smaller operation than the 27,000 square foot shop it occupies today. You see, he met Dave Kindig around the Salt Lake City car show scene while he was building custom mini-trucks, and Dave was working in the Volkswagen world. The two became friends, and Dave eventually helped Kevin get a job at High Performance Coatings, or HPC. Kevin, however, continued spending his free time around Dave's garage, where the two were already working on vehicles together. Then came the Bone Collector. The vehicle was Kevin's Isuzu Space Cab, a personal project that he and Dave reportedly called the Bone Collector. Accounts based on Kevin's recollection say he spent the entire night working on the truck, only to arrive at work roughly 15 minutes late the following morning. That lateness reportedly cost him his job at HPC. What happened next became the turning point. Dave offered Kevin a job. Dave Kindig apparently recognized in him before there were cameras, celebrity clients, or a television audience. Dave was the designer. His sketches and visual ideas were the starting point, but somebody still had to figure out how those ideas could become functioning automobiles. Kevin was increasingly that person. His world was the part of a custom build that viewers might barely notice once the car was finished. The frame, chassis geometry, suspension, fitment, mechanical systems, and the hundreds of practical decisions that determine whether a spectacular-looking car can actually work. This became important as the Kindig operation grew. Motor Trend identified him as the builder of a Kindig Cadillac that took roughly 13 months to complete, while the finished car incorporated a 4-inch roof chop, custom trim, modified fender wells, and a 454 ramjet engine. On another Kindig build, Kevin discussed the engineering choices behind a custom chassis, while the shop combined an Art Morrison frame with independent front suspension, a 4-link rear, and high-performance braking hardware. And this is where Kevin's real importance becomes easier to understand. On television, Dave naturally became the face of the operation because he was the designer, owner, and creative visionary. Kevin, meanwhile, occupied a different position. If Dave could look at a drawing and imagine what a car should become, Kevin's job was to help make sure the machine underneath that vision could survive reality. By the time the cameras arrived, that reality had become enormous. Kindig-It Design had expanded from the small operation Dave and Charity Kindig established in the late 1990s into a facility measuring 27,000 square feet, plus another 10,000 square foot warehouse nearby for vehicles waiting to enter the shop. Hot Rod reported that the company had more than 40 employees, while the shop's own current team page lists a large network of specialists ranging from engineers and machine shop personnel to body specialists, fabricators, and parts staff. This was no longer one designer and a few mechanics crowded around a garage. Multiple builds could be moving through different stages simultaneously, with every project demanding coordination between design, fabrication, bodywork, paint, assembly, and engineering. Even before the television audience knew his name, Kevin was therefore positioned at the center of that machinery. And when Bitchin Rides premiered in 2014, the cameras did not create his importance. They simply exposed a role he had already been performing for a decade. The television audience saw Kev Dog arguing, joking, driving, fabricating, and solving problems. Behind those scenes was something less glamorous, but far more consequential. A shop foreman who had been there since 2004. The perfect television show and the problems behind it. When Bitchin Rides first put Kindig-It Design in front of a national audience in 2014, the shop looked almost impossibly well organized. There was Dave Kindig, turning sketches into extravagant machines. But the polished image concealed something important. Kindig. It was not a television set pretending to be a business. It was a real custom car company. The more successful Kindig-It became, the more exposed it also became to ordinary business disputes. One of the clearest examples of the business battles behind Kindig-It emerged in federal court in Utah on November 25, 2014. Kindig-It Design sued Creative Controls, a Michigan company, along with Speedway Motors, a Nebraska company, and Rutter's Rod Shop, a North Carolina company. The case was filed primarily as a patent dispute, but the complaint was much broader. At the heart of the dispute was an automotive product that Creative Controls was selling, including what the court described as a door handle kit that Kindig claimed infringed its patented designs. Kindig held patents covering its automotive door handle technology, and it alleged that Creative Controls had crossed the line from competition into unauthorized use. But there was another, more unusual accusation. Kindig claimed Creative Controls had taken photographs from Kindig's Utah-based website and used them on its own websites and promotional material. According to the allegations, the photographs showed cars that Kindig had customized, yet Creative Controls used those images in connection with its own marketing, including the promotion and sale of its Silent Hand smooth door handle product. Kindig argued that this could make customers believe the vehicles shown in the photographs represented Creative Controls' own work. The history of those photographs made the dispute particularly complicated. The court found that roughly 5 years before the lawsuit, Creative Controls had actually donated a custom parking brake to Kindig for use on a car Kindig was building. Afterward, Kindig sent Creative Controls a disc containing photographs of the completed vehicle, accompanied by a letter saying Creative Controls could use the photographs for promotional purposes. Years later, Kindig alleged that Creative Controls went beyond that permission by copying photographs and other material from Kindig's website. So this was not simply a case of two companies arguing over an anonymous image found online. There had been an actual business relationship between them. A product donation, photographs exchanged between the companies, and an earlier understanding that some promotional use was permitted. The fight was over how far that permission went. Creative Controls responded with a powerful procedural argument. Why was this case even being heard in Utah? Creative Controls was incorporated in Michigan. Its president told the court that the company had no regular or established place of business in Utah, no employees there, no property there, and no Utah bank accounts. The company also maintained that it did not systematically target Utah customers. Kindig countered that Creative Controls operated an interactive website capable of taking orders, had sent the donated parking brake to Utah, had allegedly copied material from Kindig's Utah website, and had sold a door handle to a Utah resident. But that last transaction contained an extraordinary wrinkle. The Utah purchase had been arranged at Kindig's request, specifically in connection with the litigation. Both sides agreed that the transaction should not count as a legitimate basis for establishing jurisdiction. That left Judge Jill Parrish with a surprisingly technical question. On January 20th, 2016, she ruled that Kindig had not established personal jurisdiction over Creative Controls for the patent claims. The existence of an interactive website was not enough. The court rejected the idea that a company could automatically be sued in every state simply because its website could accept orders from customers there. Kindig had not shown that Creative Controls had actually targeted Utah residents with the allegedly infringing products, or that Utah residents had genuinely interacted with the site in a way connected to the patent claims. The patent claims against Creative Controls were therefore dismissed for lack of personal jurisdiction. But Creative Controls had not escaped the entire lawsuit. The judge drew a sharp distinction between the patent claims and the allegations concerning the photographs. Kindig alleged that Creative Controls had actually copied photographs from a Utah website and used those copies to create derivative material. Unlike the abstract possibility that someone in Utah might visit an interactive website, that alleged copying was an affirmative act directed at material located in Utah. Judge Parrish therefore found that Utah could exercise specific personal jurisdiction over Creative Controls for the claims arising from the alleged copying. That included copyright infringement, conversion, Lanham Act claims, deceptive trade practices, unjust enrichment, and related allegations. The ruling produced another twist. Kindig had brought 14 causes of action against Creative Controls, but the court did not simply allow all of them to proceed because they appeared in the same lawsuit. 6 were patent-related and fell with the jurisdictional ruling. One business disparagement claim concerned statements allegedly made at a trade conference in Las Vegas and was unrelated to the Utah website. Several other claims survived because they were tied directly to the alleged copying of Kindig's photographs. Even Kindig's fraud claim encountered trouble. The court concluded that Kindig had not adequately alleged that Kindig itself had relied on the allegedly misleading photographs, an element required for a traditional fraud claim. Then, the case became even stranger. By May 19, 2016, a default certificate had been entered against Creative Controls. The company was no longer actively defending itself in the same way, leaving Kindig to pursue the remaining issues against it. Meanwhile, Speedway Motors was still fighting on another front. Speedway attempted to assert a counterclaim seeking sanctions and attorney fees, characterizing Kindig and its attorneys as vexatious litigants. In June of 2016, Judge Parrish dismissed that counterclaim, finding that Speedway had not identified a legal basis allowing those federal statutes to be used as an independent counterclaim. The federal case continued into 2017. Kindig sought additional discovery from Creative Controls, arguing that the company's responses were inadequate. But on April 21, 2017, the court denied Kindig's motion to compel, finding it untimely because the discovery deadlines had already passed. The federal docket eventually closed later that year. Yet the most intriguing chapter was only beginning. The fight had now moved beyond whether Creative Controls had infringed Kindig's rights. The question became whether Kindig would actually be able to collect whatever it was entitled to, and whether Creative Controls still possessed the assets needed to satisfy that obligation. That question led to a second lawsuit in Michigan. In Oakland County Circuit Court, Kindig-It alleged that after the default against Creative Controls, the company and people associated with it had acted together to dissolve Creative Controls and move its assets into related entities, allegedly to frustrate collection. One of those entities was Creative Mobility Group. Kindig alleged that Creative Mobility was now selling products previously associated with Creative Controls, including the Armstrong Lift patent and pedal mates. The complaint pointed to a striking collection of similarities. Creative Mobility allegedly operated at the same address as Creative Controls, was managed by relatives of Creative Controls. Officer Mr. Stowers sold former Creative Controls products and maintained web connections to the older company's pages. Creative Mobility fought back, arguing that Kindig had not pleaded the alleged fraud with enough specificity and that the accusations were essentially conclusory. But on March 28, 2017, Judge James Alexander rejected that challenge. The court was not ruling that Kindig had proven a fraudulent transfer. Instead, it ruled that Kindig had pleaded enough specific facts for the claims to proceed. The allegations included the timing of the transfers, the shared address, the relationship between the companies, the transfer or continued use of products, and the absence of an alleged formal assignment for the Armstrong Lift patent. The judge therefore refused to dismiss the fraudulent transfer and conspiracy claims at that stage. But there is one important point here. None of this establishes wrongdoing by Kevin Schiele, but it does reveal something television rarely showed. Behind the immaculate cars and dramatic reveals was a real company protecting intellectual property, defending its commercial interests, and, when necessary, spending years in court to fight over what it believed belonged to it. And this brings us to our original question. When the show started raising questions. For a story that seemed to be about a man disappearing, the most revealing evidence is actually happening in plain sight. Kindig, its current team page, still lists Kevin Schiele as shop foreman, and the company says he runs its 27,000 square foot shop, remains involved from the beginning of a build through its completion, and specializes in chassis and suspension. But there is an even more concrete sign that his role survived the television era. Kindig-It's official booking page currently offers Kevin Schiele as an appearance option alongside Dave Kindig. That means he is not simply an old cast member whose name remains on an archived television page. He is still being presented by the company as part of its active public identity. The clearest evidence comes from what happened after Bitchin Rides. In January of 2026, Kindig-It launched Kindig All Access, a new official YouTube series specifically designed to show the work that the television format could only compress. The company says the series follows projects through design, fabrication, bodywork, paint, assembly, and road testing, with new episodes released weekly. The old show may have disappeared, but Kindig-It deliberately built another camera window into the same workshop. And the new format is revealing something the original series could not always emphasize: how long individual projects actually take. Kindig-It's current project archive, for example, lists CF1 Roadster number 26 as completed in 2026 after 6 months of work. The car combines a carbon fiber body, a custom Roadster shop chassis, a 650 horsepower Lingenfelter LS7, one-off wheels, and extensive body modifications. That single project provides a useful reality check against the compressed television narrative. A finished car might occupy only part of an episode, but the underlying build can consume half a year. Kevin's relationship with Dave predates the television series by years and has continued far beyond it. In an October 2025 retrospective, Kindig-It described the two men attending their first semi-show together under the Kindig-It name in 1999. The same account finally supplied the missing piece behind one of the strangest stories surrounding Kev Dog. In 2002, Kevin was pulled over on the way to Las Vegas. An old ticket resulted in his being jailed, and when Dave arrived to bail him out, Dave himself was booked over a tint ticket warrant. Charity Kindig ultimately got the pair out so they could make it to SEMA. Meanwhile, Kevin has remained visible away from television. In 2026, Kindig-It scheduled appearances with Dave and KevDogg at events, including the birthplace of Route 66 Festival in Springfield, Missouri, and the company's calendar lists additional joint appearances at major automotive events later in the year. The company's summer tour announcement specifically described Dave, KevDogg, and the Kindig-It rig traveling to events around the country. So while casual viewers may have stopped seeing Kevin every week, automotive audiences have continued encountering him in person, alongside the vehicles and machinery that made him recognizable in the first place. There is another sign that Kindig-It itself has moved into a different phase. The company received a National Highway Traffic Safety Administration manufacturing license in 2023, and its current business includes the CF1 production cars alongside its traditional custom builds. Its official history describes the license as allowing the company to expand into full-scale production. Kindig-It has expanded into designing and producing vehicles under its own name, and that finally destroys the premise that Kevin Schiele somehow vanished. What disappeared was the weekly television narrative. The company remained. The projects continued. And Kevin is still part of the team. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.